I fell in love with Xenoblade Chronicles when I played the first one in 2024. I wasn't really a JRPG person back then, but I certainly am now, in no small part thanks to the incredible adventure of Shulk and his friends across two great titans. Just a little heads up, if I mispronounce a name, I'm sorry in advance. Because I played with Japanese VA, English names never stuck with me, and I have no idea how to say some of them properly, but I did my research to at least match them to the characters correctly. Xenoblade Chronicles was released in 2017. It's technically older than the definitive edition of the first one I played 2 years ago. Despite being a main series installment and having two in the name, it has no connection to the first one whatsoever except for maybe two things, so I'd say with full certainty it can be played as a standalone game, and you don't need to play the first one, although I do recommend Xenoblade Chronicles 1 with all my heart. It's an amazing game. XE2 takes place in Alrest, the world of Cloud Sea, where incredible mystical beings called Titans drift, and on these Titans various people are trying to make the best they can of scarce resources and small plots of habitable land. Each big Titan carries a separate kingdom, although there are smaller Titans that inhabit the Cloud Sea, and while they might not carry an entire civilization on their backs, they can still choose to carry around some of their human friends or partners. There used to be more great Titans, more kingdoms, but 500 years ago, during the Aegis War, 3 Titans were destroyed, terrible cost of saving all the others. In the world of Alrest, some people possess a special talent, Driver's Gift, that allows them to awaken blades from special core crystals. Blades are sentient beings that command elements and possess powerful weapons. Once they are awakened, they are bound to their driver, and this bond is indestructible. Once the driver is dead, the blade returns to their core crystal, losing their memories, and falls into slumber until they are awakened again by someone else. You play as Rex, a young boy who works as a salvager, a brave adventurer who dives deep into the Cloud Sea to retrieve rare treasures and remnants of ancient civilizations, and then sells them at the Argentum Trade Guild for some shiny coins. Rex is a kind, outgoing soul, and he always sends a part of his profits back home to Leftharian Archipelago to help out his village. He's traveling on the back of a smaller, dragon-like Titan Azurda, who likes when Rex makes a campfire on his back because the heat makes his old bones feel younger. At the start of the game, you are hired by a bunch of weird but rich guys for a difficult and really obscure salvaging job. It all goes awry very quickly, and in the process you not only awaken in yourself the power of a driver, but also create a bond with a legendary fireblade Pyra, who'd been sleeping in a mysterious sarcophagus under the sea for who knows how long. She asks you to take her to Elysium, fabled gardens of plenty on top of the World Tree at the very center of the Cloud Sea, and thus your adventure begins. XC2 is not an open-world game in a traditional sense. It's somewhat fragmented because you are traveling across multiple Titans that are separate kingdoms, but within those kingdoms you can roam absolutely freely. Once again, I came to the conclusion that no one does open worlds quite like Monolith Soft. The environments are so rich and vibrant, teeming with wildlife that is not necessarily all hostile to you. There are so many secret passages and hidden vistas to uncover. Honestly, the sheer scale of it still makes my head spin. Not to mention that all Titans are quite different. Garmot province is verdant with many lakes and waterfalls, while the dying Titan of the Empire of Morardain is a barren wasteland choked by metal and stone. Letharian Archipelago is actually a school of smaller Titans that swim around a bigger Titan, and each of them is a separate island. Every time I arrived at a new place, I was blown away again and again by how different it was from what I'd seen before. However, with an incredible open world comes Xenoblade Chronicles' signature, absolutely abysmal pathfinding. Remembering my experience with the first game, I was wondering how long it would take me to start Googling how to get somewhere. Didn't take long at all. Just a few hours in, I found myself running around the region clueless as to how I was supposed to get to my main quest marker. XE2 features a compass that shows you how many steps you need to take to reach your quest marker and in what direction. It also shows you a little arrow if your destination is higher than you currently are and you need to climb, or lower and you need to somehow descend. Sounds helpful, right? Not in the slightest. The game doesn't actually base the step count and direction on any real path you can take, I think it just draws a straight line between your current position and your marker, ignoring the fact that you can't really get to it by taking 300 steps forward, but need to take a 400 steps detour in the opposite direction, climb a tree route, go through a bunch of caves, and then take 150 steps forward. Multiple times I was following the compass only to end up on the edge of a cliff with 600 steps remaining in the up direction, as if the game wanted me to suddenly grow wings, or under a waterfall with my nose in a wall behind it, with 200 steps remaining directly down, as if I was supposed to drill through the lake floor to the Titan's core. It is quite annoying, but to be completely honest, it is only a problem when you're visiting a region for the first time and do not have a map of it yet, so you can just look where the quest marker is to better position yourself. Later, when all the regions are discovered, you can at least have some sense of direction by looking at the bigger map, and then figure out the details on the spot. Your adventure takes you across multiple titans and multiple kingdoms, and everywhere you see the traces of the Aegis War that happened 500 years ago still lingering. You see the unresolved tangle of conflict that took root centuries before the events you are playing through now, and its encroaching shadow eclipsing the future of the world. A group of Torna terrorists who named themselves after the great kingdom of Torna that was the main battlefield of that ancient war and ultimately sunk beneath the Cloud Sea, is hunting down you and Pyra to take her away. To what end? Who knows? The more you travel, the more you see people struggling to survive on dying titans, fighting for scarce resources, fragile peace being sabotaged by destructive parties who seek to profit from more and more conflicts suffocating all rest. But you have to move forward believing that reaching Elysium, the legendary gardens where the god of this world, the architect, lives, and bringing Pyra there will somehow save every nation from withering away or dying in bloody wars. The way I'm describing the premise of the game might sound rather grim, and frankly, it is, but in my humble opinion, XC2 does an excellent job balancing absolutely heartbreaking, gut-wrenching parts with humor and respite. I will even go as far as to say that it does so much better than XC1, thanks to its exceptionally colorful cast of characters, a lot of interactions between them, and some hilarious side quests. XC2 has quite a lot of characters even in the main cast, and I found that it explores them way more than XC1 ever did its characters. Each has an impressive growth arc throughout your adventure. I won't spoil every companion's identity, but I will tell you a little bit about the first two you meet at the very start of the game. The first one is Nia, a Gormody girl with cat ears who defected from the terrorist group that hired you for the salvaging job and decided to join you. Nia is the healer of the party, despite having a fairly short temper, and her main blade is Dromark, a white tiger who addresses her as if she's a princess. She might seem like a spoiled, capricious kid, but throughout the game I couldn't shake the feeling that there was this terrible darkness in Nia's past that she was running from, and I wanted to help her feel accepted and safe in our little ragtag group. Your second companion is Tora, a Nopon who has no inherent driver ability, but that didn't stop him from achieving his dream of becoming one. He's a brilliant inventor, and with your help he builds himself an artificial blade, Poppy, who functions like a regular bound blade. Even though Tora is, in part, a comic relief Nopon, just like Riki was in XC1, I found him not only hilarious and adorable, but also brave in the face of danger and unyielding when it comes to pursuing his dreams or protecting his friends. Poppy, too, is not just a robot blade, but a newborn soul searching for her identity and her place among other blades, from whom she differs in everything but function. I simply have to praise truly exceptional pacing this game has when exploring all main characters. You will learn new things about them almost all the way up to the end. There was a moment when I thought, I've been traveling with these people for 30 hours and I still have so many questions about them. These questions were ultimately answered when the time was just right. Here, I also need to mention a very welcome change to heart-to-hearts, optional cutscenes that trigger at certain places if you have a certain party of characters. These scenes usually add more context to their relationships, explore their past or hopes for the future, or show them contemplating your current mission. Some of the heart-to-hearts are hilarious, some of them deeply melancholic, but these little events were undoubtedly the highest, most valuable reward for me in this entire game. If I saw a heart-to-heart appear on the map, there wasn't a cliff I wouldn't scale to get to it, There wasn't a convoluted path I wouldn't figure out. In XC1, you also have these types of events, but for them to play out, you not only have to have the required cast of characters, but also a certain level of relationship with said characters, which was an absolute pain to obtain. With great regret, I skipped most of them because I simply could not be bothered to jump through all of the hoops. But in XC2, thankfully, you just need to have all relevant characters present, and that's enough. Despite every main character having a blade they're especially close with, they can freely resonate with any core crystal you find on your journey and awaken another blade. Every character can equip up to 3 blades and switch them in battle depending on what the situation calls for. As usual, I just wanted to use Pyra, my storybound blade, and rarely remembered to summon anyone else, but other characters were pretty good at adapting to the situation and changing up their blades, thanks to their pretty amazing AI. Your party members immediately react to what is happening during the fight and not only choose skills that better fit the situation, but also summon more suitable blades and use specials that synergize best with whatever you just used. Not to mention that you can play as any character if it's more fun to you. I played as Rex because I felt more comfortable with him, but at any point I could switch to Nia and play as her and Dromark, or to Tora and Poppy. Each blade has a fan-shaped affinity chart associated with them, which is essentially a skill tree. There they have 3 vertical rows of battle skills, 3 rows of specials, and 3 rows of field skills. The more powerful the blade is, the more nodes on the chart they can obtain. Each horizontal half-moon row unlocks when you have built sufficient trust with the blade, for example through completing side quests with them in the party, or just fighting with them and building affinity, which is a special power link between a driver and their blade. It might be a weird thing to say, but I loved affinity charts. Each unlocked node has a condition you need to fulfill for it to activate and actually impact the performance of your blade, and those conditions might be wildly different. For example, it might be defeating a certain monster, so you need to figure out where this type event lives, and then track them down. Or it might be as simple as using an ability a certain number of times, and the blade will activate this node naturally as you fight with them equipped. Some field skill nodes might require you to just walk a certain number of steps, talk more to no pawns, buy stuff, collect things, or talk to a certain person in the city and start a quest. Each affinity chart is like a little adventure map, and while some conditions might be annoying or confusing, more often than not they make you go places and do stuff you maybe wouldn't be doing otherwise. Well, since we are here, I think it's time for me to complain about the one thing, other than pathfinding, that I found to be an unnecessary pain in my behind, and it's field skills. These are exploration-related skills, and there is a ton of them. However, each blade has only 2, or 3 at most. These are skills like element mastery, botany, lockpicking, super strength, salvaging mastery, and so on and so forth. For example, if you're harvesting a collection point that drops flowers, and you have 1 or more blades equipped that have botany, they might trigger, and this collection point will yield either more flowers or rarer flowers. Blades with super strength can help you move stuff around or chop down trees. Blades with leaping can help you jump incredibly high or far and reach new places. If you have several blades equipped with the same skill, those will add up, so you can still pass a high field skill check with several blades who have just a point or 2 in it. Sounds cool, right? Although, the problem is that you have absolutely no agency over what types of blades you have, because all of them, except for the story-related ones, are random. When one of your drivers resonates with a core crystal, they get a random blade with a random skill set. More often than not, it's common blades of various affinity chart sizes. In much rarer cases, you might get a unique blade with a cool art and a questline, but no matter which one you get, it will be random. Because one blade can only have a maximum of 5 levels in a field skill, that is, if they have enough unlockable nodes, most blades have only 3 in their field skills. In late game, you often must have multiple high-level blades to even come close to what is required of you, and if you do not have blades with the skills required, it just locks you out of side quests, of reaching secret areas, of all kinds of things, and it sucks. Many times towards the end of the game, I would pick up a side quest, do half of it, then discover that the next step requires absurd nonsense like Electric Mastery 9, and I have like 2 blades with this skill that are barely leveled up, and even if their charts were maxed out, they still wouldn't give me 9. I did a side quest once, came back to turn it in, and discovered that to get to the quest giver, who moved for some godforsaken reason, I now need a bunch of leaping and earth mastery. For a while, my strategy was to clench my teeth, sort through all the blades that I have, and just start scraping the bottom of the barrel, equipping those who had even one inherent point in the skill that I needed. And then I had to unequip all of them and equip all my regular blades back, which drove me up the wall every single time. It was the only thing that I did not like at all while playing, and all the late game stuff with field skill level 9 garbage started really getting to me at one point. And then I figured out that since it was the only thing that was souring an otherwise perfect game for me, the game that I had been enjoying tremendously for dozens and dozens of hours, I just needed to change my attitude, and that was it. And I did. I thought, well, this is an RPG, and in RPGs, not everything might be accessible to you because you have a certain class and a certain set of skills. Some things just get locked out. I am not entitled to every single side quest or optional activity. Here, I might not have a lot of influence over what kind of skills my team has, they're mostly random, but that's alright. I have a lot of botany and agronomy blades, also some of my guys can cook up a feast, others have super strength and even beguiling charm, which prompts random people in the streets to give us free stuff. This game is so large and wonderful, and focusing on the parts I can easily access instead of getting worked up about the things I can't have is the way to go. Articulating that to myself helped me a great deal, and I stopped chasing field skills challenges I was not properly equipped to handle, and with a light heart, I just let them go and continued to enjoy every minute of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 up until the very end. I played XE2 in English but with the Japanese VA, not only because the cast is absolutely fantastic, but also because I always want to have access to the original text, even if only to a portion. After completing the game, I realized that I would love to do like a 2-episode feature here on the channel about the XE2 localization sometime in the future, maybe after I finish my Dark Souls project. Many names were changed in the English translation, some of them were properly localized, not just translated, but others are different for the reasons that are completely mysterious to me. On the other hand, I am in absolute awe of how the localization team treated Nopons. These little guys have a very distinct style of speech in Japanese. Anyway, one thing is obvious to me, not only a lot of effort went into the localization of XE2 because there is just an unimaginable amount of text, just simply a ludicrous load, but also a lot of love and care too, so I'd love to explore even one or two aspects of that when I have the time. Lastly, XE2 has a single DLC, a standalone prequel story called Torna the Golden Country, that takes place during the legendary Aegis War and adds context to many characters who survived it and then lived long enough to show up in the main game. I played the DLC with a heavy heart, knowing already what terrible fate befalls many of the characters, but the story was superb and truly illuminating. Also, it felt incredible to explore the Tornan Titan before its fall and meet legendary heroes you only hear about in the main game. Besides, the Golden Country has many quality of life improvements that I dearly hope will be added to the main game when it gets its long overdue definitive edition. The DLC has a somewhat different combat mechanic that I felt was even more fun than the one from the main game, and since there are no random blades, only story ones, the problem with field skills was completely eliminated. I didn't want the DLC to end so badly that I did all field skills challenges and all side quests, including absolutely minuscule ones, which is highly uncharacteristic of me. Of course, after finishing it, I felt the irresistible urge to replay the main game with the new context, but then I remembered that I do not have another 80 hours for that, but what I do have is about 50 games planned for 2026, so no replaying XE2 in the nearest future. I highly recommend both XE2 and Torna the Golden Country. I fell in love with the world of Alrest, and for a long time it was my comfort place to just come and hang out without any clear purpose. In this sense, it felt just like Hyrule in the last two Zelda games. On release, XE2 was criticized for being such a change in tone to XE1, but I have come to value both games for what they are. I went in with no expectations of XE2 to carry the torch of its predecessor, and I see absolutely no issue in these games being quite different. This year, I seem to only have the mood for 100-hour-long RPGs, and XA2 was exactly what I wanted and even more. A stunning world that I could live in, wonderful characters, and an incredible story about saving the world, but also being kind, offering a helping hand to the people in need, and standing by your friends always. I'm incredibly excited to play XE3 in the near future. I don't know anything about it, which is great, apart from the fact that it will somehow bring together the worlds of the first two games, so that would be very interesting to see. Let me know if you've played Xenoblade Chronicles or any other game from the Xeno series. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.